On the 11th of February this year, a historian named Erin Bertram wrote a blog post titled "The Sublimated Grief of the Left Behind." I am sure that many of you have already read this. If you haven't, there is a link below. You definitely should read it. You should definitely read it. I wanted to... I don't know, respond is not the right word, because what I want to offer is not a response. It is perhaps my answer to one of the questions that Erin poses in this post. And also, I guess, some solidarity of feeling. Maybe that's misplaced. I don't know. I don't have any answers. All I know is that this is a powerful and unsurprising telling of the state of academia, both here and in the US, and the status of precarious academics and how hard we work and how many of us make it in academia. So I'm not going to tell you what happens in other parts of the blog post. You should just go and read it. I don't want to speak Erin's words. It's not my place to do that. But I do want to bring up two things. First, she says after receiving a job rejection, she thinks will be her last shot at a tenure track position. She says, "I didn't feel I had the right to grieve." Because, she goes on, we all know the odds. We all know how difficult it is. We all know. And I get that. I felt that for 18 months after I finished my PhD, when I couldn't get a job and I wasn't getting anything published and I was in a hole and I felt deep despair, but I also felt guilty about feeling despair. And I felt like a deep jealousy for people who had got jobs, even people who had got like really exploitative jobs. I felt awful. And I felt awful for feeling awful. And it's a spiral down, a cone into a pit of despair. I'm reading Dante's Inferno at the moment, so maybe I'm thinking too much in those terms. And the part that felt the worst was not feeling like I had a right to feel shitty and not really having all that many people to turn to about it. Because while, yes, logically, you assume that other people feel like this, everybody puts their best self forward on social media, in lunchrooms, whenever anyone feels like, you know, I don't know, because everybody's the competition. And when you feel shitty, then the competition, for me at least, I felt much, much more competitive. Both with myself and with literally everybody else. And it felt awful. And so, yes, I validate the feeling of, not that Erin is looking for my validation, but I want to kind of validate that feeling. The not feeling like you have the right to grieve. And of course you do. Everybody does. This is you, not specifically Erin, but everybody in this position. A really great look at this is Kelly Barker's Grace Period. I'm going to link that below. If this is something that you are going through, feeling on the brink of, are a new PhD or have just begun your PhD, and or have PhD students, or just are in academia in any way, shape or form, this is something that you should understand. It is a feeling that you should attempt to understand, because most of your younger colleagues will have felt or will feel some version of this at some point in time, more or less, depending on what happens to them in their personal circumstances. And this is not just related to jobs, but also publications at conferences and the general competitiveness, funding and everything. There are always places for people to fail, and therefore there are always places for people to feel like they don't have a right to grieve, because it's all competitive. Moving on from that, Erin poses a question in this blog post about why we forget the people that are left behind. Why we forget about the people who don't land jobs, who move out of academia, not because they choose to, but because they don't have a choice. And I want to offer an answer, which is obviously not a definitive answer, but is my best guess. And that is because of guilt. It's not that survivors forget. It's that it's too easy to put yourself in that position, and you realize exactly how dispensable you are. So it's guilt that the system has failed. It's guilt that good scholars get left behind, that good work goes undone because the system is not great. And it's fear. It is a lot of fear. And I think that probably that the balance of guilt and fear is different for depending where a person is in their career. I think for PhD supervisors and senior scholars, it is a lot more about guilt, about the system failing, about we need PhD numbers because we need their fees and we need their slave labor, and we need early career academics because we need courses taught and we don't want to pay for research. And the further down the seniority you get, the more the fear creeps in. There is so much fear in academia and at every level. And I am not in any way trying to excuse the forgetting, or that people like Erin feel like they've been forgotten, or people in general. Not. Yeah. Because it's horrible. It's awful. It is genuinely awful. And we shouldn't. We shouldn't forget. And we shouldn't insensitively just treat people that we don't forget like they haven't really left academia. Like, you're still going to publish your book, aren't you? This is one of the examples that Erin uses in her post. But that work is so valuable. It has to be published. But if there's no direct incentive to publish, academic publishing doesn't make lots of money. There is incentive for people still on the job market to publish, even when they do it in their own time. So I do all of my publishing in my own time. I didn't get paid for it, but that's because I still have a couple of years left until my self-imposed deadline comes up. And if I want to get that permanent job, I need to be publishing. But once that deadline is gone and I've moved on, I being the generic I now in that situation, then there's no incentive to publish. There's no money, there's no recognition, there's no fame, there's no satisfaction. And then the only reason to do it is if there is one of those things or something else that you think is a benefit. if there is satisfaction in publishing, then it becomes a thing to do. But just doing it because other people say, but your work is so good, well, if it's gonna negatively impact your life, either from the stress of the whole process or from like the giving up your nights and weekends, then why do it? So yeah, this is so hard. Genuinely so hard, because like this, Erin's post was haunting. It was hard to read, and it was familiar, and it's very familiar. It's not just one or two people. There are a lot of people. Right. Go and read Erin's post. Even if you've read it, go and read it again. Send it around your mailing lists. Post it on Twitter. Post it everywhere. And make sure everybody reads it. Because this is early career academia. Fear. And guilt. Okay. I'll see you in the next video.